Hello, and welcome to this series of videos in which we will show you how to create apps and portals using the Silver Essence platform. In our previous videos, we implemented the database design from our business case, and we extracted the basic configuration from the database into our Silver Essence configuration. Let's take off where we left off last time, and we will start the quick editor from the system menu. Click to log in, and here you have the business entity quick editor. From the tool selector, you will see the database editor and the database extractor we used in the previous videos. And for this video, we move up and go here to the base entity quick editor. The base entity is used to configure the data logic for your solution. So here you see organizations, and there is some logic when you enter an organization, and that's what you configure with these tools. So from the existing base entities, let's go into location and let's see what we can do here. On the left, you will see that we have three tools available. The naming tool, which comes in handy if you have a database which is not your own and where column names are not that logical. So here you can change the names that are used in the configuration. Now, since we are building on our own database, we don't need to adjust the naming. So let's go into the entry form presentation. And here you have to visualize the screen. And let's say if a user enters a location, you want to make sure that the location has a name, a city, and an owner organization ID entered. So we mark those properties as required. On the left, we have the input type and created and modified. We want to have that very precise, so we are going to use date and time. The third tool we have is relation mapping, and this is where we map a property to a lookup, the search screens that we have for entering data. So when a user enters a location and gets to the field parent location ID, we want the user to pick that from location. The owner organization ID should come from organization. So let's switch to the next base entity we created, the service issue. A service issue should have a service issue type ID. So we again connect the lookups here. This will make sure that the selected value will be a valid option in the database. After the relation mapping, we go up into the entry form presentation again, and we mark created and modified again as date and time fields. And we have two text fields that we want to have a timestamp button to go along with it. That will add a button, and when the user clicks the button, that will add the current username and date and time into the text box. On the right, we mark all the fields we want to have entered always as required. So let's get to the next base entity, service issue type. And there we're going to mark code and description as required. And we switch created and modified to be date time. We want to have that very precise. There are no lookups, but I always check if there are any, just in case I have forgotten some. With the service object, we have some lookups that we need to link, and that's what we're doing here. And then we go up into the entry form. Now you can go into one specific tool and then loop through the base entities, or you can select one base entity at a time and then loop through the different tools from the base entity quick editor. There's no required order, just use the tool and use it as you feel most comfortable with. Just make sure that you create a pattern for yourself in which you ensure that you have checked all the tools for all the base entities that are within your configuration. So here we are checking the last of the views that we created as base entities in the previous videos, and as you can see, we can also mark some columns as read only. That means the user cannot change the value in the user interface later on. So that's for all the base entities we have here. Now let's go into another tool from the quick editor, and that's the base entity properties. Here you will see you have the same base entities, but we can have a look at them in more detail. Now let's pick, for example, the location, and we want to have a nice formatting in the user interface for the location number, and I'm going to give you an example of that. You can have these formatting strings for your numbers, and let's go and change that for some of the other base entities that have a number as well. For example, the issue number, we're going to use the same formatting, and we're going to go to the object number of service object, and as you can see, I click the small save button within the panel. As you can see here with the organization, this is what the effect will be. The number will not be a single number, but it will be formatted in this format. So that's one thing you can do there. Now let's go into the service issue type and select the code property. We had that entered manually, and to prevent that different service issue types have the same code, we check the box keep unique. We click the save button on top to save and apply the configuration. So that's the quick editor and the properties. For the next thing we will show you, we will go into the lookups. And we have seen this in the previous video as well. Let's pick our locations lookup here. And as you noticed in the previous video, you can test it and you can select data from here. Now we're going to do something here because we also have a business controller location. Now we're going to check the box allow create, and from the controller to create we select the location. Save the lookup here and save and apply the configuration here on top. Now if you test the lookup again, you will notice that a create button was added, and from the selection screen the user will be able to enter new locations directly while selecting data. So that's making it a lot easier for the user to select and create data from the same screen. So for the next thing I want to show you, we are going to switch to the full editor. And the full editor is basically the same collection of tools you have in the quick editor, but they are loaded all at once. So let's go into the mapping and select BaseEntities, and let's select the service issue type here. And as you can see, all the tools from the quick editor are also present here. Now let's expand the panel here for relations. This is something that is not included in the quick editor. And I will show you with an example what you can do here. With service issue type, it should check the service issues. And if there is a service issue with the service issue type, that means that we cannot delete the service issue type. So this is a way to create data logic that prevents data from being deleted when there is related data to it. So you cannot delete a service issue type if service issues are linked to that type. That's one thing you can do from the full editor. So, and to finish off this video, I'm going to show you one thing which you need to check with the base entities. If you create a table from our database editor, it will have a primary key column. And if you extract the configuration, the primary key column will be marked as such within the configuration. For tables, this will always be the case. And if I select the primary key property here, you will see the checkbox here, primary key, is checked for this column. Now, for tables that we created with our database editor, this will always be the case. But this might not always be the case if the database was not created through our database editor, or for views that are created with our database editor. Now, if you have a view and the primary key column is not recognized, simply check the box and click the Save button within the panel. Do this for all the views that you have created as base entities using the database extractor. Each base entity needs to have a primary key column to be active within the configuration. So check that, save, and apply the configuration when you're done with that.